Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Entheogenic Esquire YouTube channel. My name is Greg Lake, attorney Greg Lake. Glad everybody could join us today. I see I got a few of my regulars here. I got Lizard, I got Susan. Waffles, very nice to see you. Thank y'all for being here today. Today's going to be a much shorter episode or live stream, might I say. I don't have just a ton to bring today, but I did want to hop on and do a quick stream today because I did have a chance to do some more follow up about the TPUSA class action. I actually had a chance to speak with Mr. George Webb this morning, maybe just a few hours ago before this stream. And so I want to report on some of the things that we discussed. I got some more information, like I said, about this class action. Apparently, this is something that was discussed with some other content creators before I guess I even came into the fold here. And so we'll discuss that, my impression or understanding based upon watching both George's live stream today and talking to him just a little while ago. And so I wanted to fill everybody in on that. And then I wanted to briefly discuss on the back half today, I want to discuss generally the Epstein Files Transparency Act, because I'm going to start also doing some coverage on that. Obviously, we just had another document dump. I guess it was like a day or two ago. It was this week for sure. But anyways, we had another document dump with the Epstein files. I think, as most people are aware, generally there hasn't been really good compliance with that law. So we're going to talk about just the statute today. And then as we move forward, I'm going to be bleeding in content, discussing it, discussing what's been released, what does it seem to indicate, et cetera, because just like we're looking at with the Tyler Robinson trial, just like we're kind of looking at with TPUSA, this is yet potentially another spot where, accountability is not being had, and it's getting to be very ridiculous. It's almost if people behind the scenes are trying to play us as stupid. And I think it's high time that we stand up and put our foot down and really get knowledgeable about these things and really be able to analyze this and look at it and say really what the deal is, and potentially try to identify where is the main root source of corruption. I mean, I think we've pretty much got it nailed down where that is, but it's just kind of going through the weeds and getting to it, and then formulate a plan of what do we do to get this out of here, because it's no longer, it hasn't been serving us for sure, but it's definitely not serving us now. And so we're going to talk about the Transparency Act today to get a general understanding of what its requirements are. So that way, as we move forward with content, we'll have a good basis and understanding of whether the DOJ has complied, which no, not really, but to what level have they completely transgressed the Epstein files release. So anyways, let's talk about the class action. Before I get in there, we're going to be talking about the class action and TPUSA, and this is just like all my other videos. One, let's make it very clear, TPUSA has not been formally charged and definitely hasn't been formally convicted of any kind of crimes or fraud or anything like that. We are going off the information that has been released to the public, the tax returns, state filings, articles, all these things that creators like Wolves in Finance. I've pointed out some violations of TPUSA, so we're going off that information. But just to be clear, there is no conviction against TPUSA. They're apparently not now formally charged, right? We got the IRS letter. They're not even investigating. And so I just want to make that clear before we jump into this. I don't want people to think, oh, another thing, there has not been a class action filed. So I don't want people to be mistaken on that either. There is currently no class action that's been filed against TPUSA, but we will discuss, as we were yesterday, kind of the progress made on that. We did have a snowstorm this weekend. We're good. We're warm. Snow's starting to melt a little bit today. I'm hoping to go and get my Starlink, probably going to be tomorrow or Tuesday, but we'll have it up and running here soon. And last but not least, I don't know if y'all have been checking out the comments section in some of my videos, but obviously there's some bots there. And it's funny because one of the bots keeps coming back and saying that saying, Andrea Burkhart, the attorney that I discussed the other day that was on the live stream with Paramount Tactical. I don't know. I don't know if she's got a bot or whatever, but there's been several bots that come and make it a point to comment and tell me that Andrea Burkhart is one of the most well respected and well researched attorneys on YouTube. So, and I responded in kind. But just want to make everybody aware that there are bots out here, even on my small channel, in the comments trying to lobby on behalf of Andrea Burkhart, apparently. So just wanted to point that out. We'll talk about bots on a later episode. I'm going to do some more digging into them because it's just weird to me. Like, yeah. Anyways, so the lawsuit. So yesterday, remember we talked about this. I had found online. I take that back. I had spoken the live stream before last, I believe. Yes, the live stream before last. I was discussing, because we've been looking at TPUSA, the violations of the tax code that we have identified, and obviously Wills and Finance has alleged some other violations as well. So in that vein, I wanted to take a look at, well, or can we expect some type of accountability out of this, like an investigation, any type of indictment or anything? And we discussed, looking at the full picture between TPUSA and TPUSA related entities, considering the Treasury letter that came out, Trump speaking at Charlie's Memorial, JD Vance speaking, basically because of the perceived political connections that TPUSA has with the current administration, and considering all the prior really non-attempts. I was going to say failed attempts, but I'm not really even sure that the IRS has ever really proactively gone after TPUSA. But anyways, the full picture kind of gave us, at least I concluded here, my personal opinion conclusion is we're probably not going to see any enforcement or accountability on the part of TPUSA coming from any kind of federal agency, including the Department of Justice. Okay. And that's just my opinion. And it seems like many of y'all agree based upon the full weight of the circumstances that we've been observing and reporting on and analyzing. Okay. And so that prompted my live stream where I started to discuss, well, what about the possibilities of the attorney general, right? Because the attorney generals in any given state are by and large the enforcement authority for state nonprofit laws within the state. So in this instance, because it doesn't look like the federal government IRS is going to do anything, we then took a step back and said, well, what about, for instance, the attorney general in Indiana? I can't remember his name. It's like Nitka or something like that, because they are domiciled on paper. They are headquartered in Indiana. And so the attorney general in Indiana actually does have authority, regulatory authority over TPUSA in Indiana to ensure that they follow the state's nonprofit laws. Okay. And then we were discussing, the hiring of Erica Kirk, the fact that Erica Kirk has seemingly violated the tax code through political endorsement, yet as far as we know, there were any censure or anything like that. And so again, just several different things that seem to indicate there might be some nonprofit law violations. And so we talked about would that be enough for the Attorney General of Indiana perhaps to conduct some kind of investigation? Again, this person seems also, in talking about the Indiana Attorney General, seems also to be connected. I've had several people in the comments say that, oh, that dude's corrupt. My just very cursory glance online of him also seemed to indicate that there were some, really close connections there with the Trump administration. And so considering if Trump's administration doesn't seem hot to trot whatsoever to either investigate or try to bring on some type of accountability with TPUSA, caveat, if there actually is something there, right? We just don't have enough information to say right now 100% they defraud XYZ. We do have a little bit of clear evidence as far as the political restriction violation, but anyways, is there going to be enough for the Indiana Attorney General to move forward with some type of investigation? It's really all speculation, but obviously as an attorney, I feel that if the attorney general in Indiana were presented with all the kind of tidbits and information me and other content creators have discussed, well, I do believe it certainly should be enough for an investigation at the very least, right? And then obviously, depending on what it uncovers, would be whether the attorney general actually takes action or not. Now, within that conversation, I also went a step further and talked about the potential for donors to, again, file a lawsuit, and through that avenue, try and hold TPUSA accountable. And I did a, perfunctory, but a little bit of an analysis of kind of what those claims would be. And obviously, they would mostly reside in contract fraud, state level consumer deceptive trade practices acts, things of that nature. So switch on over. Then during that live stream, I was notified through the comments that George Webb had discussed or was intending to file a class action lawsuit. So then I acted on that information, did some digging, and found that information, which I discussed in the live stream yesterday. If people can recall, we discussed a spoliation letter. So George Webb sent a spoliation letter to, who was it, Mikey McCoy at TPUSA, like I discussed yesterday as well. The spoliation letter is a letter to a potential defendant or a third party in a civil suit, basically instructing them to preserve certain evidence that you believe is going to be material to an upcoming litigation, right? So in this instance, George Webb sent to Mikey McCoy on behalf of TPUSA a letter, a spoliation letter, preservation letter is essentially what it is, telling them to preserve certain categories of evidence that I discussed yesterday. Okay. And so from there, I went and pulled some more information about George Webb's uh, class action lawsuit, the spoliation letter. And then I actually was able to speak with him today. So here's what I found out about this class action lawsuit that I wasn't aware of. I doubt y'all were aware of this either, but apparently George Webb had reached out to Barron. Again, this is according to what George Webb both told me today on the phone and listening to his live stream. But apparently he had been in contact with at least Barron, I believe, about potentially doing a show, like some type of, very well produced TV show or documentary, something along those lines that had to do with the class action. And from my understanding, the idea was that it would be centered mostly around like Barron and Candace, and then maybe Ian or one other of the investigator YouTube creators, and that Barron was going to be like one of the main figures doing the litigation, helping oversee the investigation with Candace. Obviously, would also be there doing the investigation as well. She would probably have been the main character, I would assume, and then other investigators and cameo appearances and stuff and bringing it. So I love it. Like the idea, that sounded great. Like I know that if I wouldn't have known anything about that and then saw that pop up on my feed that, hey, this is a new show, I'd be pretty stoked. I mean, I think that's pretty awesome. Unfortunately, I think because of the issue with Jason Goodman, who was one of George Webb's business partners, Barron, I think, has backed out, and God bless him. I mean, that's on him. And so that, and I'm just describing the situation, not right, wrong, or indifferent here. I am a, independent third party, I guess I'll say. But I will say this about George Webb specifically, because I know there were some people who expressed they weren't really big fans of George Webb. I'll just speak from my personal experience right now, is that George Webb seemed to be a very nice man to me. I have no reason at this point to really throw any shade his way. He's very nice to me. So I do understand that some people have expressed, issues with George Webb. I don't necessarily have those issues because my personal experience so far has been good. So with that being said, next thing, George and I talked about the class action, considering the situation as it exists now, seemingly looking like Barron might not be in touch to push that forward. And it was kind of funny, but when I was listening to George's live stream this morning, he was like kind of like telling his people that like, oh, well, Greg's going to pick it up. He's going to do it now. And so that's one thing I wanted to talk about right now about me and this class action. One, I'm behind it 100%. Based upon what I've seen, in the public record, whether it be the documents, interviews, all these things, all the things we've been talking about, Dank's talking, all these creators been talking about, from the tax returns to the articles, again, almost everything. I do think that there's something there. And I absolutely believe with regards to the donors, for sure, that there's something there. And at the very least with the red hats, right? I mean, that's kind of a pretty concrete one right now that we're aware of with the donate, get a red hat, and don't receive a red hat. However, George was talking today in regards to Wolves and Finance's findings. According to George, that they're, once they peeled back all the layers of the onions, I think Wolves and Finance's position, I'll check up on this. Don't quote me as this on this, but I want to say Wolves and Finance's position, according to George, is that only like $600,000 or something like that actually ended up to go towards these programs and basically the nonprofit exempt purpose. Now, again, I need to go review Wolves and Finance's videos. I definitely need to talk to George again. But if we just take that hypothetically as true, I don't know, let's just make this a hypothetical. Let's say that there was a hypothetical, nonprofit, structured and, with a mission and purpose similar to TPUSA, and they collect, I don't know, again, this is just going to be a hypothetical number. Let's say they collected $40 million and only, 600,000 of that, or let's say even $10 million and only $600,000 of that actually went to furthering that mission. Well, then just on the face of it, we potentially have a donor base wide claims, right? Because if it's that much to where it doesn't matter which solicitation you responded to, you gave to these nonprofit entities because of its stated mission or purpose, and that the money doesn't end up going there, well, that seems like a pretty valid claim. And so again, and I'm not going to get into the weeds here on this, but I just wanted to say that there are potentially other bases for these claims other than just the red hat thing. I believe we had pointed maybe one other instance or scenario out. And then also too, the volunteer claims. George talked about that. I think he said that Barron had a little issue with whether that was going to be, doable or not. I haven't really thought too deeply into it per se, and I would need to speak with George a little bit further about what kind of the basis for those claims are. I think George's claim personally, as he said today, might have run on the statute of limitations, but I'll have to really check into that. But anyways, with that being said, I am good to definitely help on this class action. I'm a solo practitioner. I take single, more or less, civil rights cases as they pop up across the country. I don't have like a law office with paralegals or anything like that. And let me tell you, class action lawsuits are, just the volume of administrative work required to gather all these different plaintiffs, get all their information, interview them, sign them up. All these things are way beyond the capabilities that I would have without question. I've never been directly involved in litigating a class action lawsuit. I feel comfortable with the procedural rules. I understand how class actions work, things of that nature, but in no way, shape, or form do I have enough direct experience to hop in this is a very important class action lawsuit for a number of reasons, and we'll talk about those in a minute. But I just don't have the personal or professional capacity to do it. But look, I'm here, all hands on deck. Like I told him, you can say one thing about me and my record practicing law. I have a stellar pro bono record, stellar pro bono record. So I don't mind for sure jumping in and even donating my time and expertise to help move this along, on a professional level. I'm not going to be able to handle it by myself. With that being said, I talked to George. I think him and I are going to work together to get possibly a draft complaint filed. So this would be, for instance, it would be us just drafting the initial complaint that theoretically would be filed in the case of a lawsuit. And normally, so when I practice law in these different courts, I practice all over the country, even though I'm licensed in Texas. But and I think I explained this the other day about the Pro Hoc Vice application, but normally I have to get a local attorney, right, in that state, in that court to litigate with me in order to get me accepted on a Pro Hoc Vice basis. And so the reason why I'm saying this is normally if I need to do that, if it's not a criminal thing, if it's a civil suit, what I'll do is draft my complaint and then go around and send a draft copy in confidence to different attorneys trying to find a local counsel. I think that would probably be the best course of action here to get us a good attorney and firm on board, is to draft a complaint and then start shopping it around and seeing if we can find a really good class action attorney and firm that would be willing to possibly pick up and run with this. I can commit to that. So, and I did speak with George today. We're going to be going back and forth trying to draft up a complaint. And then once we do, we'll publish it, and then we'll see where we go from there. But I just wanted to give y'all all that information because we've obviously been talking about this over the last several days, and very grateful to meet up with George. I'm very grateful George mentioned me on today. Tensions are high, and we talked about this, and I've talked about this. Look, tensions are high, unfortunately. It's just very important. This whole thing, y'all, is very important for a whole myriad of reasons. And I've said this for since this channel for sure, is I just think everything that we're seeing with even the Charlie Kirk investigation with the TPUSA is, to me, it's just really symptomatic of a lot of things that are wrong with our country. And I really think that the primary thing that's wrong with our country is the division. And I think that there's a certain group that has sown that division. And I think that those groups have their hands have their hands all over both TPUSA and the Charlie Kirk thing. That's my opinion, my perspective based upon information I have. And so, standing up here and as a community coming together, thing, ladies and gentlemen, is that our ability to come together across partisan lines, okay, whether it be religious, political, all these things, our ability to come together and mount a unified, concerted, I guess it would be an offense, defense, a little bit of both, I guess, but really offensive play in this direction. I think that we can have incredible results. And I do believe that, America's future hinges on this a lot. I'm not saying that if we don't get this together and do this class action lawsuit and all that, we're all going straight in the tank. I'm definitely not saying that. But I do believe that if we stay steadfast, push forward, and not, settle for anything less than full accountability. I think if we don't do that, we're going to be in trouble. I think if we do that, that we're going to be looking to get our country back. I think if we commit to doing that, that we can finally say America first. And so that is why I'm here telling you today. I'm dedicated to the mission. I'm not going to be able to do it alone. But I do have confidence that with all of us together, getting these papers together, the complaint, et cetera, George is going to do some more investigation. And so that could also be critical too. He's going to bring in some more investigation. What he's looking at, ladies and gentlemen, from my understanding, hey, Miss Susan, what he's looking at is actually the houses. He's actually been looking at, like, Tyler Boyer, these people's houses. According to him, if I took our conversation correctly, allegedly, just his opinion, is he believes that a lot of this money actually went into these properties, is what he's trying to tell me. But anyways, he's doing some more investigation. And I think the results of that investigation would properly also want to be injected into the draft complaint. Yeah, they're damn mansions. Yeah, exactly. And so we're going to work together to get that put together, I guess you could say. And, I surely do hope that as far as like Barron and Mr. Goodman and, other people with the theories and stuff, I really hope we can come together. I hate it because people are accusing each other of being government agents, and that's just never a good or healthy environment. But the sad thing is, and what sucks is that there probably is some government agents being injected, or things are being injected into our conversation within our community by government agents for the purpose of, sidetracking us, I guess I'd say. And I think that's pretty evident to everybody. So it kind of sucks because ultimately that is probably for sure going on. But at the same time, we need to come together. And so it's a really sticky situation. Um, I'm definitely going to pray that this be resolved and that we can all come back together and get back on track. Um, yeah. So trying to think, is there anything else I wanted to say about class action? Oh, real quick. So I will say this is I was going to refrain from getting like into the weeds about like the details, the legal details of the class action. I spoke a little bit with it, obviously yesterday, but there's this thing between state claims, federal claims. Now, there's not a lot of statutes at the federal level because there is no common law at the federal level. So there's like no federal negligence standard, right? Um, and so, when we're looking at, well, on what basis will the class action proceed on the federal level? There's really okay. So, and we talked about this, I think yesterday, day before. Remember, is that the Internal Revenue Code doesn't provide like individual citizens the right to go sue or enforce the Internal Revenue Code. That would be, obviously with the IRS. And so on the federal level, what basis would, a class action potentially proceed upon? And I'm not claiming to know, all that, but I just want to say is that one potential. Okay. And I'm not going to comment on the ultimate merits of this, but I just want to throw it out there is that there's potential for a RICO case, racketeering and corrupt organizations case. Again, I don't have the facts to say whether that's a for sure thing or not, but I just want to bring that to people's awareness because, under RICO, if it were to be proved, okay, because there's not, as far as I know right now, enough information, but let's just say, for instance, in a hypothetical situation that it was shown that TPUSA committed mail or wire fraud, which could be through the solicitations, again, whether through the mail, through email, through phone, whatever. But let's just say in this hypothetical situation that was the case, that there's pretty clear mail or wire fraud here. Well, RICO would allow a plaintiff in that situation to sue under RICO, and that mail or wire fraud would essentially provide the impetus for the RICO case to be valid. Okay, so and again, that's not to comment on the feasibility of that necessarily here, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention because that is a potential for a case like this could come under RICO. Now, it's very difficult. RICO cases, especially in civil context, or even in criminal, are going to be very difficult to prove and judge. They're going to require a lot in order to prove that. But I just wanted to bring that up because I hadn't mentioned it yesterday. I didn't really go into, well, what at the federal level could serve as a basis for a class action, and just throwing that one there. There obviously could be other federal statutes that could provide that basis, but I was just bringing that one up by way of example, because it does also, people are aware, RICO is also a criminal statute, right? And unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to. I'm not going to hold my breath for a federal criminal RICO case against TPUSA and them. How about I just leave it there? Evelyn, yes, potentially a RICO case is possible. Yes, I do believe. Again, that's just my opinion. That's not saying for sure. There's enough there for that. But I'm just getting y'all's cogs going up here. Let me think real quick. What do I want to do? Yeah, I'll leave the class action alone for right now. One thing I will say is that under RICO, there is a potential for 3x damages, what we call, meaning that if a plaintiff goes to trial and proves a RICO case and shows that they've been damaged, $100,000, there's a potential that there could be a 3x multiplier there. And a lot of statutes do that. A lot of statutes have built-in kind of punitive damages provisions. In my understanding is that RICO also has one of those with the 3x treble damages. And Here I wonder, and maybe y'all can help me give me your thoughts on this. Are people who donated, would you rather, if you had to choose, okay, between getting your money back or seeing that TPUSA and those people, and if there's wrongdoing there, them be fully held accountable? Which one would you prefer if you had to choose one? Getting your donation back or seeing that people who violate nonprofit laws are held accountable? I'd be interested to know that. So, anyways, I'll leave that there. Let's jump over real quick and talk about the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Um, Again, I want to start talking about this. This is also a very important issue, I feel. Um, the Epstein files, obviously, what we've been seeing, it's even if 1/1000th of what we're seeing is true, I mean, it's very disturbing and alarming. And I'm not going to lie, almost every time I either watch a video or look further or deeper into the Epstein files, it just becomes darker. It becomes darker and darker. And look, that could be because the stuff we're seeing is potentially untrue, right? So I'm not fully, discounting that. But what I can say is, in the totality of everything, based upon all the evidence that we've seen both come out of the files, been reported to us, we've heard I've heard several of the victims' deposition testimony. I've seen several of the victims who've given interviews, and man, it's okay. Hold on. What's Krishna? What you saying, Hari Krishna? What about Research Weber Goodman? Just wondering, and sorry I got off track. I'll come back here in a bit and take a look at it. Reigning nine, I would rather the folks at TPS are held accountable for their fraud and corruption. Okay. Yes, and I'll talk about that here in just a bit. That's interesting. I figured they would. But anyways, the Epstein Act, okay? And so I think we all know a lot of the background there, and I actually pulled some points here. It all started in about, what was it? Hold on, sorry. Okay, so that's right. So with the actual Epstein files, it was 2024. More than 4,500 pages of documents were released by the Guifrey, God, what's her name? Guifrey civil suit, but heavily redacted, naming about 150 individuals. And then early 2025, DOJ distributed phase one binders with only a few hundred pages. Because, okay, disappointing. Many people expected transparency. July 2025 is when the Justice Department stated publicly that no further documents would be made public. And so, yeah, and one of the kind of aggravating factors here for me, as I'm sure a lot of y'all, is people like Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, out here on social media well before they were ever appointed, making this Epstein file release like the number one government corruption. Let's shut them down. I'm going to get in office. We're going to go bust some heads. We're going to release all these files and we're going to, get the deep state. This is pure speculation, but, sometimes I wonder is, really what happened there. It makes me think, did Kash Patel and Dan Bongino have the idea that, predominantly most of the people in those files were going to be leftists or Democrats potentially? And then once they kind of got into the hot seat, pulled open the files, maybe they saw that that wasn't the case. Again, this is pure speculation, but in any event, right, there was a severe backtracking of the promises that were made prior to being appointed to those positions. And the public was rightfully outraged. And there's also been some, accusations that Kash Patel even potentially perjured himself in front of Congress by stating that there was the only evidence essentially in the files was that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked these girls to himself, if I remember correctly. Okay. And so there's just a huge debacle about the Epstein files because everyone wants to know, rightfully so, like, who are these predators that were running with Jeffrey Epstein? And in the files seems to be where those people are listed. And so again, just been a whole debacle. And so we had Ro Khanna. Okay, we had both Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey came together and pushed this bipartisan bill, the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Now, I did just read, so this is interesting. I read that the Epstein Act passed in both the House and Senate with overwhelming majorities. Let me look this up real quick. So that's right. So at first, there was resistance to the act. And so they needed to get the discharge petition, if I remember correctly. And then they were short one signature on the discharge position, which is where Griselda or Adelita Grijalva, a Democrat from Arizona, if y'all remember correctly, there was the Speaker of the House was not wanting to push a vote on the bill. And so this discharge petition was in need of signing, and there was a delay getting Adelita sworn in order to get the discharge position. So it was a whole mess, right? It was a whole mess. A lot of people claim that this was an obstructionist move by the leadership in the House, by the Trump administration. I'm not going to speculate on that right now, but just kind of going over the facts leading up to the passing of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Okay. But as far as the overwhelming majority in the House and Senate, okay, so this bill that we're about to go over was passed in the House 427-1. Okay, overwhelming majority. And see, what was it in this? And then almost nearly, what was it in the Senate? I don't have the Senate vote right here in front of me. But anyways, I bring that up because the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which is a law that I use very regularly in my civil rights practice, that was passed in 1993, was also passed with an overwhelming majority in both the House and the Senate. And so these things are very rare. But let me say this, ladies and gentlemen. I think the fact that we had such an overwhelming majority should tell us, just like it should tell the lawmakers, where America is at. Because again, very rare. So when you have such an overwhelming and forceful majority, that says something. That says something. And to be honest, that is a lot of also the impetus why I'm here talking to you about it today, because it tells me that Americans are hungry to not only see the files, but to see some accountability. And as we'll talk about in just a second, unfortunately, the Epstein Act itself doesn't have really any enforcement mechanism in the sense that there's no punishment, or there's nothing in here where they could like go and hold the DOJ, these people, accountable in any real way, I guess, if that makes sense. But let's just talk about the tenets here. So one thing, when this act was passed, which it was signed into law, let's see real quick, when is this thing signed into law? November 19th, 2025. That's crazy. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act was also passed in November, but it was 1993. But anyways, the main thing, one of the main provisions here is that these documents were supposed to fully be disclosed, right, within 30 days from the passing of the act. So that would have put us, let's see, November. So it had been December 19th. Okay. So by December 19th, according to the act, all the Epstein files should have been disclosed. Yet here we are just this week. There's still more documents being disclosed. And I don't think that we still have all the documents. Okay. But let's keep going with the act. Now, here's what it says specifically. It says the Attorney General shall, subject to subsection B, which we'll cover, make publicly available in a searchable and downloadable format all unclassified records, documents, communications, and investigative materials in the possession of the Department of Justice, including the FBI and the United States Attorney's Office. Now, what documents are they specifically talking about? So here's what they say. Documents that relate to Jeffrey Epstein, including all investigations, prosecutions, or custodial matters, Ghislaine Maxwell, flight logs or travel records of Jeffrey Epstein, individuals, including government officials, named or referenced in connection with Epstein's criminal activities, entities, including corporate, nonprofit, academic, or governmental, with known or alleged ties to Epstein's trafficking, any immunity deals, non prosecution agreements, plea bargains, or sealed settlements involving Epstein or his associates, internal DOJ communications relating to it, all communications memoranda, uh, da, 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 all communications memoranda, directives, logs, or metadata concerning the destruction, deletion, alteration, misplacement, or concealment of documents, recording, or electronic data related to Epstein, his associates, his detention and death, or any investigative files. So I have not. Okay, so I haven't seen any, and I'll go follow up on this. But has anybody seen any stuff come out that shows they have potentially destroyed any of this evidence? Again, I mean, I think when we look at the total scheme of everything that's going on in and around cases that the Trump administration is connected to, this evidence preservation thing seems to be coming up a whole lot. Now, I've been trying to keep up as well as I can with the disclosures that have been seen anything like a smoking gun showing where there's been some evidence destruction per se. Now, I do know that a lot of people say that Epstein pretty much filmed everything within his houses, and I've seen some shows and some other things that seem to indicate too. Yet I haven't heard anything about any recording from his home being released. Now, I will look further into this, but I haven't seen anything about that. Um, Lastly, it also calls for documentation of Epstein's detention or death, including incident reports, witness interviews, medical examiner files, autopsy reports, and written records detailing the circumstances and cause of death. So, another thing, and we'll talk about this too, there's a lot of mystery surrounding Epstein's death, and it seems that who was it? I think it was that Michael Wolff guy, who's apparently some type of journalist or something that had a decently close relationship with Epstein. Now, it was his opinion based upon the circumstances as he understood the time that it very well might have been our president that was in some way involved with that whole situation involving the unaliving of him. Again, that's just speculation, but I've heard it plenty of times from a lot of people, which doesn't make it true, but just kind of putting it out there because that all plays into just the whole shebang here with the files being released. Obviously, with him gone, we'll never be able to truly substantiate probably a lot of what we see or what we see in the Epstein files as far as it relates to him having personal knowledge. I think, the prospect of him going to court and pointing fingers at some of the people, I mean, some of the people we've already seen mentioned in the Epstein files and probably some of the people that we haven't seen already, those are probably people, right, who didn't want Jeffrey Epstein to come into court and point their finger at him. Okay. And so that kind of gets into the next part of the Epstein Transparency Act, right? Because obviously Ro Khanna and the other members of Congress and Thomas Massie foresaw that there was probably going to that the DOJ was probably going to try to protect some of the people who are politically connected to the White House, okay, and other people, business people, things like that. What I mean is that both politicians and business people connected to the White House were probably going to try to pull something to protect those people. And so here we go with subsection B says that no record, called prohibited grounds for withholding, no record shall be withheld, delayed, or redacted on the basis of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity, including to any government official, public figure, or foreign dignitary, right? So I was right. So they were worried about both current political government officials and then also these public figures, which would be like the technocrats, like Elon Musk, who they just produced some stuff. Apparently his name was mentioned in the latest release. And so, yeah, so they saw this ahead of time and made it, a part of the law that, hey, you can't exclude these politically connected people on the basis of this would embarrass them, right? And I mean, let's be real. What does it look like if you're going to do that anyways? It looks like you're trying to cover up and protect for these politically connected people. Look, here's the deal. if their name in the Epstein files is in a manner or in a context that doesn't look incriminating, then let that stand on its own, right? I mean, I want to say, I mean, I know this is my personal perspective on it, right? Just because someone is mentioned in the Epstein files just willy nilly, like for instance, just because they're listed as flying on his plane at one time, doesn't indicate to me that they've actually engaged in the SA, right? In the CSA. It doesn't mean that to me necessarily. Um, and so, yeah, and so withholding these people's names just because it might embarrass them, just because their text do the speaking. If their name is listed in a way that implicates they might have been, for instance, that they spent 3 weeks at his island or something, let those things speak for themselves. If the context is embarrassing and implicates them in some CSA, well, they should. And look, at the end of the day, if embarrassment is all that you're suffering after potentially being involved in CSA, and I think y'all understand what I'm saying. I mean, that should, in a good, perfect, I would say, Christian world, would be the last of your worries. For engaging in behavior like that, that should be the last of your worries. But it just says volumes to me and I'm going to say it, the level of corruption. The fact that, and this also extends to quite opinion on TPUSA and them, because the way I see it is that there seems to be some pretty intense, at very least circumstantial evidence implicating like Erica Kirk and some of the people closest to Charlie. Again, this is just my opinion, my perspective on the evidence I've seen, is that there's some evidence that potentially implicates them in the Charlie Kirk incident, right? But we don't see them pleading the fifth or asking for an attorney or nothing like that. No, as a matter of fact, they keep sending information and trying to provide alibis and stuff like that. Like, look, I'm glad that they've made some attempts to try to provide some alibis and stuff like that. But let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen, it hasn't worked out too well for them, at least in my perspective. The alibis that have been, provided, you know, don't cut the cake, right? So really, in a sense, they're further incriminating themselves. But why would they do this in relation to a potential murder investigation? They should have an attorney, but the fact that they don't speaks volumes. It says to me, in my opinion, perspective, that they feel protected, that the powers that be, okay, the powers that be at the DOJ, but White House things, aren't going to come after them. That's the only way it makes sense to me why they'd even be out here talking, doing the things, saying the things, interjecting themselves into these investigations, things of that nature. So, obviously with the Epstein Transparency Act, it's like people are worried about being embarrassed. Like, for real, that should be the last of your worries. You should be more worried about pleading the fifth and getting a lawyer if you believe that your name are in these files, or at least to the extent if you've actually participated in some of these behaviors, most definitely. And so, yeah, it's like I'm just very tired of being politically connected means that you're immune. And not just immune from shoplifting or doing something innocuous. I don't know, illegal dumping in the dumpster behind Walmart or something. Oh, no, 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 no. We're talking about being immune from one of the most, in my opinion, most heinous crimes that in our judicial system recognizes. That's violating a child. Yeah, violating a child. To me, that is one of the most severe, um, most heinous person can commit. And yet we have very good, solid information. I mean, look, we have witnesses, right? And you're free to believe or not believe these witnesses as much as you want. But I've said this on one of my other videos. I was able to see the videotape deposition, or at least excerpts of it, from one of victims that says that our president actually violated her. And again, after watching the video, really taking in what was being said, going back and reviewing some of the other contextual evidence, right, from other Epstein file releases. Let's see. Have y'all seen that public photo of Trump and Epstein where Trump's like in Epstein's ear and he's like sitting, Epstein's like this? Look, I'm a guy, and I bet the other guys know exactly what that is, right? It's Trump talking to talking to Epstein about some female, I'm sure, that's in their vicinity there, right? Again, and that's not all the other contextual evidence, but it just shows me that these two guys had a relationship that centered around women. And again, that's not all of it, right? But then I take, and just for instance, one of the other context clues that I had was that it was like an email or some other document that was in one of these file dumps where Trump is talking about nubile girls or something, or it was something, the word nubile, Nubile. And I remember Valhalla VFT talking about this. It particularly struck him as pretty heinous too. But again, so that was another. So there's just been many different pieces of contextual evidence in conjunction with a witness deposition that I've seen that got me to where I'm at today. I always remain open-minded in the sense that if there's other evidence that comes out, for instance, if it came out that this victim, this girl who gave this deposition was, some pretty certain evidence she was lying or telling the truth, I'm open for that and I'm willing to accept that. And if that's the case and it kind of absolved, I'm absolutely okay with reformulating my opinion about Trump. I really am. But just right now, it doesn't look good with me and him. It really doesn't. And everybody's entitled to their opinion, and I respect it. And if people think Trump's the best guy in the world, uh, amen for you. I'm glad you feel that way. I don't. I don't, unfortunately. And it just all again ties in the Epstein, TPUSA. All these things are really tied in, and to me, it shows a corrupt system. And it's not Republicans are corrupt. It's not conservatives are corrupt. It's not liberals are corrupt. I just think that literally it's the Trump administration that is corrupt, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, anyways, let's finish up this last little bit right here. Now, the law does allow, because there's been some violations of this part too, as people, but the law does allow for the government, the DOJ, to make certain redactions, and as we'll see, some of these are desirable, right? So, like the first one, personally identifying information of victims or victims' personal and medical files. In similar files, the disclosure of which would constitute a clearly unwarranted invasion of privacy. Yeah, so we don't want, we don't want to re-victimize these people. They've been victimized enough, and so yeah, when you dox people like that, which hey, I've been tangentially involved in a doxing by the DOJ, but that's a story for a whole nother day. Yeah, so no doxing the victims, no showing any depiction or any material that contains CSA materials as defined under federal law. You can redact or withhold any information that would jeopardize an active federal investigation or ongoing prosecution. I haven't seen any of those. Yeah, I don't know if that one's going to prevent any disclosures anytime soon. Let's see. Sorry, no, lost my spot. Would jeopardize an active federal case or ongoing prosecution, provided that such withholding is narrowly tailored and temporary. Withholding any depiction or images of death, physical abuse, or injury of any person, or contains information specifically authorized under criteria established by an executive order, be kept secret in the interest of national defense or foreign policy. So, lastly, all redactions must be accompanied by a written justification published in the Federal Register. Okay, and so I'm going to go and start reviewing these too. The ones that have been done, I'm going to start reviewing them and reporting on them, because within the next week or so, ladies and gentlemen, on this channel, our High IQ outfit, we're going to have a firm grasp of exactly what's been disclosed, who's disclosed it. Basically, I'm going to be able to have a full report on the compliance checklist here, essentially, like what how well has the DOJ complied with this Transparency Act. Okay, so that's going to be kind of my first goal with this subject that I'm going to be covering, is to get a grip on exactly where we are with compliance with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Okay. Um, let me see real quick. And then there's a thing here about classified information. It essentially says that even classified information is supposed to be disclosed to the maximum extent that it can, meaning that there is a point where national security kicks in. And oh, what'd you say, Susan? They're going to fail that test, Greg. I think they've already failed, Miss Susan. But hey, we're at least going to go through, and I'm going to be fair and give everybody a chance. I'll just admit I'm not a huge fan of Pam Bondi. Not that I like think she's like a terrible person or anything like that per se. It's just, again, this Epstein Files thing doesn't help, and we're going to get into this too. The ICE stuff does not help at all either, just to be quite honest with y'all. So, but anyways, we definitely will get into that. The report to Congress, and so within 15 days of completion of the release, so that would have been, if we would have put this at December 19th as the actual disclosure date, then that would have been what, the like 3rd or 4th of January or something like that. Within 15 days of completion of the release required under Section 2, the Attorney General shall submit to the House and Senate committees on the judiciary report listing all the categories of records released and withheld, a summary of the redactions made, and a list of all government officials and politically exposed persons named or referenced in the release materials, with no redactions permitted under Section 3. Okay. So that's kind of where, just to get a general understanding or idea what is required under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, because I am going to go and do some digging, and we're going to be reporting on, and this will probably be a series. Like, for instance, I think maybe next live stream, I'll go and do a digging and see what all was released during the first round, because we've had, multiple rounds here. So I'm going to go and look and see, at each round, what has been released, what was the timing of the release, what redactions were made, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, I don't have the bandwidth to go through all the documents that have been released, okay, because, and let's be honest, the volume of documents being released has probably been part of the strategy too. Well, I take that back. The act did call for the full release of all the documents, right? And we're kind of been getting some dumps here. And so I'll look into that, and we'll report back and let you know what I find. But again, I think the Epstein issue is one of the most important issues that we're facing right now, for a number of reasons. But I mean, I think the most glaring one is the prospects that our entire world could potentially be being run by a group of large group of PDF files that are also very violent and have the power to start wars and things of that nature. And so I think it's just all very concerning. And I think it relates back to our greatest ally in many ways. And so, yeah, I wanted to report on that. Let me point this out too. I've said that our greatest ally over there, they've dominated our political and legal systems, right? Because there was a case, and I know there's been more, but I want to say maybe about 5 or 6 months ago, there was, and it might have been actually longer, I apologize, but there was some kind of CSA case. I think it was out of like Las Vegas or something like that, with a person who's a citizen from our greatest ally. And I think the attorney general out, or the U.S. attorney out in the Las Vegas district court, is also, congruent with people from our greatest ally there. And, what happened? Oh, they were just deported back to, to be with our greatest ally, despite the fact that they had a pretty solid indictment against them for CSA and CSA related activities. And so, yeah, it's sickening. And, where it begins and where it ends, I don't know. Other than to say that we can work together to create a place where it ends. Okay. And I will do also too. Have y'all heard of AZAPAC, AZA? I think it's the anti-Zionist political action committee has now been created. It's just basically anti-APAC political action committee. I'm going to look into it. I'm definitely going to come and do a whole episode on it. I hope to maybe even interview the people who are behind it. And just get that information out there because I've seen it. I love it. And, stuff like that's good stuff that we definitely need to, rally behind. So let's go to the chats. Yeah. Hope everybody's staying warm, by the way. My pipes accidentally froze last night. So as soon as I'm done here, I need to go try to handle that. George Webb's opening songs were really good. Yeah, him and Danks have Charlie Kirk related or, this whole thing related theme songs, which is pretty cool. Let's see. Yeah. So at Raining 9, yes, familiar with Danks, familiar with his work, his material. He's great. If you haven't already subscribed or checked out Danks, Danks. I don't have his screen name right in front of me, but check him out. Oh, and I've done live streams with him too, but very good channel. He does a lot of very in-depth research. He has a very good community too with Discord and all that. And so, yeah, even if y'all are looking for a place to just hang out and do research, he's got a really good Discord server. I'm on it too. I'm not on there every day or anything, but he's got pretty good hangout spot too. Danks does. So thanks for talking about Danks there. Hare Krishna, pull up George Swigert versus Podesta Group lawsuit. I'll take a look at it. I'll definitely take a look at it because I know that was one of George Webb's. George Swigert being George Webb's real name. I think it's 47 hats, Greg. When you say that, Rick, does that mean 47 hats total that didn't go out to donors? Just let me know. That's very interesting. So and to be quite honest, I didn't know how prevalent that problem was. But definitely people have raised it, right? Let's see. Stand up for the little people, Susan. That's what I like to do. To my detriment many times, right? I almost literally financially tanked myself completely doing pro bono work over the last 3 years because I care too much most of the time. Fortunately, unfortunately. Let's see. Thank y'all so much, by the way. Just thank y'all for being here, showing up, supporting. It does means a lot to me. It really does. Got a feeling you will buy into the web cult. I hope he doesn't waste too much of your time or money. Good luck. Well, I mean, look, and by all means, Krishna, you're entitled to your opinion, and just my perfunctory is I like George Webb. I remain open-minded, but it's one of those things if I'm going to do work, helping to do some type of class action or lawsuit, right? I'm going to run with it on my own accord in a lot of ways. I'm not, George Webb wouldn't be the one dictating everything to me or anything like that, So it's I wouldn't let George Webb or anybody if I'm involved in doing litigation, obviously I'm going to be there, actually doing it. Now, I think if this does end up being a thing, we would go get another third party outside, attorney to handle it, per se, right? Obviously I can help doing substantive work, behind the scenes, motions. I can go to court, stuff like that. I just don't have the bandwidth to do the administrative work and stuff like that. And I'm not licensed in every federal court. And so, we need some help. Yeah. But, again, people are entitled to their opinion on George Webb. And to be quite honest, I mean, I think George Webb, he seemed pretty good. He didn't badmouth, Jason Goodman. He definitely didn't badmouth Garrett Barron. And so he seems to be pretty decent dude. But again, I respect other people's opinions. Their experience might not have been the same as mine, and that's okay. Let's see. I doubt they will get any punishment. We have the Bush and Clinton, Fauci, and 1,000 more walking our streets. I hate to think it, but hoaxing, you're probably right. I hate it, man. Y'all are really going on about the Webb lawsuit melodrama. I'll look again. I'll do some more. I'll do some more, thinking, discussing stuff like that. So, don't think I'm just bought hook, line, and sinker into everything he's doing or saying. Let's see. Because there will be so Grammy uh brings up a very good point. Because there will be little accountability, I think it will be the court of public opinion that will hold them accountable. And so, yeah, so getting the word out, right? So the stuff that we've been doing, that we've been talking about, like with professionals like me and Wolves in Finance and Baron and some of these other content creators like Danks have been pointing these things out, in the court of opinion. We just need to get it out there, right? So I think it's just a matter of getting everybody in the know. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we do have the court of public opinion, which ultimately bears upon their ability to collect donations. So again, we're never going to defame them, but we're just going to, through getting the facts out there, painting the appropriate picture for the public, hopefully we can hold them accountable that way. I love it. And in a sense, we are doing that now. I would be very anxious to see what, if anything, has happened to their like online donations, right? I'm sure that most of their big donors are probably going to donate to them no matter what, right? Because ultimately what they're doing is more than just what their purpose as far as the political involvement. But I'd really be anxious to see, like, has their average American website donations dipped any since this kind of investigation and things have gone full tilt? I don't know. That would be anxious. I'd be anxious to see that. Um, so he keeps saying haven't researched Webb or Goodman. I mean, I guess I can do some more digging. Again, but it's like kind of like my point is, if a class action lawsuit is a valid legal thing to do, and I can go and start to put that together, potentially find counsel. Like, I don't think that we would necessarily even requires the participation of Webb. Um, and then I don't know if people are just upset because it's like Webb's idea. And so if it's Webb's idea, regardless of whether someone legitimate follows through with it or not, it's still a bad idea. I don't know if that's the deal. But anyways, we'll try to work it appropriately. I venture to say almost anything you're going to do in this world, you're going to be rubbing some feathers, especially online. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. You know, doing this kind of stuff, like especially being a content creator, you got to have pretty thick skin. But anyways, I do appreciate what y'all are saying. Don't take it that I'm not. Um, I would rather folks at TPUSA. Yeah. Okay. So I looked at that one. Okay. I'd like for someone to do something to stop TP's USA's use of geofencing of everyone who goes to their events. I found that so deceptive and wrong. Thank you for reminding me of that. That is another thing that I was going to look up. I don't know if there's like any specific federal law or what exactly the cause of action, but I guess an invasion of privacy potentially would be the cause of action there for, you know, basically tracking people's cell phone location without their knowledge or consent. Now, I did ask the other day in the comments with Grammy, was there an agreement? Because they had expressed to me that they actually went to a TPUSA event, and according to them, there was no agreement or express agreement that they signed with TPUSA before entering in regards to the geofencing and stuff. But normally it's like if you get tickets, normally it's either on the ticket or in very small fine print when you go through with your purchase. So, but we'll definitely look into it. I'll see if anybody else has some more information with that. But I would imagine that if you're taking people's cell phone data, their location or whatever against their knowledge and consent, then probably in most states that would suffice as an invasion of privacy. But I will definitely tell you what, just look real quick. So I'm interested to. Let me do this real quick. Geofencing without knowledge or consent. Let's see what it says. Yes, geofencing people's devices without their knowledge or consent can be illegal depending on how it's done, what data is used, and what laws apply. And in many situations, it can support a lawsuit. So again, it just depends. It just we would have to really do some more digging on it. But yeah, it does seem wrong. And especially because they're I mean, as far as I understand, they're like selling the data to send you Israel first materials. That's just what I heard. I mean, again, speculation, but I think it's like getting your information to help push an Israel first agenda, from my understanding. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Has anybody received any communications as a consequence of that geofencing? And if so, what was it? I'd be very anxious to hear. Uh, yeah, Krishna, if you have some information, yeah, it's in theogenic@gmail.com. Feel free to send over. Yeah, I'll look at anything you send. Absolutely. Um, Cash also lied under oath about knowing Stu Peters. We, the people, are the only ones that must be held accountable. The demons are not under their laws. I had hoped that the Trump administration would have been transparent as they promised. Yeah, me too. I think I said too, just so y'all know, I would have voted. If I would have voted, I would have voted for Trump in this last election because his stance on religious freedom is congruent and favorable for my work, what I do. Um, and he didn't completely drop the ball or do anything, he didn't wreck the country his first term. So going into this last election, if I'd have voted, I'd have voted for Trump. And just to be quite honest, I was hoping for more transparency. I was hoping for the Epstein files to come out and people be held accountable. I did not realize at that time how involved that I believe Trump is now, at that time. And so I wouldn't have voted for Trump knowing then what I know now. But I definitely was hoping they'd be transparent, but it's not been good. Not been good so far. And I understand why everybody's angry and upset. As a lawyer, I'd be lying if I didn't say that. You know, I've had concerns about the breakdown of the rule of law, and it's everything from the National Guard being pulled in, to the things going on with ICE, uh, civil rights. And it's like with the TikTok sale to Ellison, like there's been an assault on some civil rights through this administration. There certainly has, and you know, it's the public, in a sense, we have kind of a we have an interest in justice too, right? Like we have an interest in seeing that justice be served on people, and it just whenever they are able to slide like they are right now, it just erodes people's trust in our democracy. It erodes people's trust in our court system and the rule of law. And it's not good. And look, I get it. If I'm Trump, I get what he's doing. It's a lot of self-preservation, especially as it relates to the Epstein files, because you know, let's say even if you didn't believe that he was like directly involved in actually, doing the thing, I still think that he was closely enough involved in what was going on to potentially be involved in a conspiracy or something of that nature with, just like with the girls at Mar-a-Lago hiring, firing, like what all was that about, right? So again, and we'll go a little bit deeper later. But and I know I keep digressing. Sorry about that, y'all. I'm trying to get through the end here. Um, Cash has been one of the greatest disappointments. Same with Bondi and Bongino. Bondi has shown to be incompetent. I don't know if it's that Bondi's necessarily incompetent per se. Think that she's towing the Trump line 100% and won't back down. And I think that's what it is. I don't know if she's necessarily incompetent. I think she probably definitely understands her job and understands, at least at some kind of level, what needs to be done or what to do. I think it's just towing the party line. And I mean, from what I understand, Trump's a hard boss. If you don't support him or back him 100%, then he's going to can you and throw you out into the wolves. So yeah, I mean, I think she's just under a lot of pressure to follow that line is what's happened, and with Cash and them too. Greg, I'm with you regarding Trump. I'm very sad about it. I was a huge Trump supporter, and he started out strong in this term, but as info keeps coming out, there are constant ties to Trump. I know. I get it, man. I feel bad for y'all too. I do, because there was with the Biden administration and with the COVID and the government overreach and forcing people to get vaccines, with the other bouts and indicia of corruption that was going on. I get it. Everyone was hoping for a savior to come in, get transparent, take care of the deep state, handle the Epstein files, get our economy back on track, stay out of foreign wars. And it's just like, it's almost like every single tenet we've come short on, unfortunately. So, but we'll keep pushing ahead, y'all. We're gonna keep pushing ahead, and we're gonna keep looking into it. And so that's one thing. It's like, I want to get a grip on exactly the most critical, important things that the government has failed to be transparent on. What has it caused? What kind of damage and destruction it caused? And then let's talk or speculate on how do we work our way out of there. Um, and so I get it. I'm trying to alleviate. I'm trying to give y'all hope that things are gonna be better, and that there is a rainbow at the end of this golden brick road, yellow brick road. Uh, so let's keep our heads. Let's keep our heads in it. Let's keep our hearts in it, and just make a commitment to unity. I think that's the most important, y'all. To be honest with you, if you're feeling a little bit of hopelessness, or feeling a lot of hopelessness or despair, or don't see the light at the end of this tunnel, my suggestion is that if you do one thing, make a commitment to stepping out of the Republican versus Democrat, left versus right paradigm. Make a commitment to come together with people who you might not see eye to eye on with some other things, and agree that there's a few things, one of them being the APAC issue, in my opinion, a few things that we need to get together and take care of. And I still am a firm believer that if we take care of the APAC issue, things are going to start looking up. Things are going to start looking up. And ultimately, I think you're going to love your neighbor a little bit more. I think you're going to start loving your neighbor a little bit more, because I don't think that the TV station is going to be on every day telling you how much you should hate your neighbor. I think that's going to be one of the consequences, good consequences of getting the APAC issue taken care of. Let's see. The goal of gathering information is transhumanism. They need to find what the emotions of people are to accomplish the evil plan. Peter Thiel hates humans and big on this concept. Yeah. Did y'all see the Peter Thiel interview where they were like, would they ask him, don't you want to see humans survive or thrive or something? And the dude took like a 10-second pause. Like, he had to think about whether he wanted to see humanity exist, like continue to exist. It was alarming to me. Which again, he's entitled to his opinion and thoughts and stuff like that. But the alarming part is like Peter Thiel, and then you look at JD Vance and you're like, oh, like, they pretty much probably live together. Yeah. It just, once you start connecting the dots, you're like, and then obviously with the conspiracy theorists and stuff, which I don't use the word conspiracy theorists in a derogatory way, just so y'all know. Alternate theory. Obviously there's a lot of them out there about Peter Thiel being the Antichrist. Yeah. Let's see. I meant whoever they sold our info to can now track sites we visit, social media activity, personal info like addresses and financials. Yes. Yeah. So that'd be interested to know. And again, that might be, one of the things that would probably be included in the contract with Superfeed, I would imagine. I'm assuming they probably geo-fenced you through the app that they got. Am I correct in that? So if they geo-fence you with the app, that means, I think people said, looking at the app, it looks like Superfeed owns the app. So, but does that mean that Superfeed owns the data that comes from the collected by the app? Let's see. Like I said, the more people wake up, the more court of public opinion will help force positive changes. I agree. Um, let's see. I donated to public radio and didn't get the promised reward. I think a class action over the caps won't get you a cap. Uh, oh yeah, well probably not. Probably not. I don't, again, I don't think the hat really at this juncture. While I do think the hat was meaningful, a lot of people apparently. I think at this juncture, it's even though they could file a claim about the hat, I don't think it's necessarily about the hat anymore. I think it's about accountability and transparency at this juncture. A donation is just that. No, it is. A donation is just that, except when your donation is promised to go towards a certain thing. At that point, it does become a contractual arrangement, even though it still retains the charitable donation quality. I had to look that up, by the way. But yeah, otherwise it is. You're right. It is just a donation, and most of the time people just give and get nothing in return. Uh, which that would also be a very interesting question, because you say, well, if you donated money and you expected this cap, well, then are you able to write it off if you received something in return? Would you need to just deduct the expense for the cap? And I'm sure there's an IRS regulation going towards this. I'd be willing to bet that you can probably write off the full amount if it's just a nominal gift, like a hat. I mean, not saying not a hat, the hat was nominal per se, but you get what I'm saying, like a token, like one of those rubber wrist bracelets, which I think that's actually what they ended up sending out. I'll look into that, but that's a very interesting question. Although I do know that you can place conditions on a donation, and if it's not, you know, followed through, that it is potentially actionable. Uh, oh, thank you, Grammy. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm going to keep doing it. Um, Today wasn't my strongest live stream, but I hope I brought some to it. I know people are still kind of weary of George Webb and the lawsuit and stuff. But look, I'm going to do some more looking into it, um, and reporting back. And obviously, before I dump a lot of my time and resources into anything, I'm most definitely going to do a bunch of research and line it up, and probably even, for instance, one goal this week, I'm going to reach out to a buddy of mine who does class actions and just generally discuss this with them and see what their thoughts are, and again, I'll report all this back, and let you know what I found. Um, and yeah, that's it. Look, obviously, I don't think we're going to see anything from the federal government. Um, and this is with TPUSA, with the state attorney generals. If we're looking at Arizona and Indiana, I don't know if we're going to see anything there. Lawsuits, even potential class action, those are some potential avenues for some accountability here. Uh, Hold on just a second. Yeah, Diane she's commenting on the Barron and George Webb situation. Yeah, and again, it's a little bit of a mess. It's kind of a little bit of a mess. So I'm not gonna go in there and try to fully dissect it. But yeah, I'm like you, Diane. I had heard. Well, he George played a little bit on his channel of a recording of Barron's exchange with Jason Goodman, and Barron, yeah, had stated something like, uh, someone sent or George sent someone to film Barron or something, but wouldn't tell him exactly what it was for something. So there's like a miscommunication, things like that going on there. So I'm not really, really, really sure what it was. But look, I'll let them work that out. I've still never talked to or met Barron, which is fine. I just, there's nothing I can really do other than, I've spoken with George and reported to y'all, and I hope they work it out. I'll do some more investigation on the class action and let you know. But if it comes out to look like it's good and legitimate and something worthwhile, we'll start rocking and rolling on it. And yeah. So, anyways, I'm going to leave it there. It's Sunday. I need to go handle a few things. Like I said, our pipes got frozen. I'm going to try to get them unfrozen without busting them. So we shall see. And yeah, thank y'all from the bottom of my heart showing up today. This wasn't the strongest live stream ever, but I wanted to come on and do these updates, talk about the Epstein Files Transparency Act a little bit. But I will be putting some materials together coming back tomorrow. I got the internet coming up. I just need to get across the valley over there to go pick up the Starlink and new computer on the way. So we're all moving towards much higher quality production, internet, things of that nature. Connecting. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate it. Got a wristband with the receipt. Okay. Anyways, I'll report back. Thank y'all very much for all the support, all the kind words and comments. All that's very meaningful for me. As y'all can see, save and accept a few content creators. I'm going at this alone. It's okay. We're going to push hard. We're going to push strong, and we're going to be successful in everything that we do. Okay. Thank y'all for your support. Keep your head up. I'm going to keep my head up. We're going to do everything we can to see some accountability here. And we'll keep reporting on it and talking about it. So anyways, much love, everybody. Have a good rest of your Sunday. God bless. And I will see y'all tomorrow. I will be back. Peace.